Hey guys, Pete has been bugging me to give a talk for a long time on something to do with transhumanism. So I work in data and analytics strategy at EY. So Pete's saying, why don't you talk about, like all the cool and innovative stuff happening with data and things like that. Like Pete, it's simple. You get the data, you kind of massage it a bit, decisions come out. It's not really, it's good. But I thought, no. Why don't we talk about something a bit more out there, which is what is consciousness, and why can't we put consciousness in a machine? So why don't we have robots running around that are actually conscious? Like in the movies, where we got R2D2 and C3PO, and they've got personalities and things are happening. Why can't we do that now? So I had two kind of major concerns about giving this talk once I signed up to it. The first was I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a cognitive philosopher by trade. So first I had to watch a lot of TED talks to make sure at least I had a resemblance of the message about what consciousness is. And the second thing is I needed to bring into the message why I think consciousness is really important to try and understand, especially around, understand the lack of understanding we have of it from a transhumanist perspective. So obviously there's a lot of new faces. So but first I'm just going to slide. This one's actually from Wired magazine from about 15 years ago. So it's a bit dated. It's going to know you're transhumanist. So on the left we have the extropian. He wants to live forever in a free market libertarian paradise. That was before the GFC, so obviously it's probably not a free market libertarian society now. He's probably some kind of neo-Marxist or anarchist or something like that. He's reading up on biomed implants, microfabrication. He's doing calorie restriction in order to kind of to live a bit longer, so that he can get more of the augmentation in the future. He got his full genetic code on his iPod. Again, it's from 2003. So, and then on the other side, you have the singularitarian, which is kind of not really. It's not really a type of transhumanist that exists anymore. It's kind of at the more culty apocryphal kind of end of the spectrum. So it was all kind of came out of an essay by Vernor Vinge, who's a science fiction writer. And then it was followed up by Ray Kurzweil, who's kind of quite prolific in the kind of transhumanist community. And what it was saying is that once we get sufficiently technologically advanced, the kind of artificial intelligence that we have is going to get smart enough that it will be able to re-architect its own programming. And so what will happen is we'll build a better AI, and then that AI will build a better AI, and it will do this in a very quick space of time. And so suddenly you're going to have this kind of singularity or crescendo of intelligence, where one minute, humans are like the dominant kind of life form on Earth, and the next minute, we're just kind of animals in comparison to what's been created. Now, the original kind of take on when this would occur by Vernor Vinge was, he said back in 1993, within 30 years, the human era will be over. And then Ray Kurzweil came along, and I think in the 2000s, he's kind of overlaying Moore's law, which is around kind of transistors on chips. So he's got his Moore's law plus a lot of imagination, and he's got a singularity curve as well. His one was also 30 years away. And I think the latest from Ray Kurzweil is that the singularity is going to happen in 2045. So it's still 30 years away. 30 years to go.
Wait, sorry, he revised it in 2029.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But we haven't got any closer. So, it's been this imagination thing based off the fact computers are getting faster, so at some point, they're going to get smart and take over. But it hasn't actually happened. So, I'll take you through, I guess, kind of a side story about why I kind of got interested in consciousness, and it was all to do with trying to understand this singularity. So I was in the UK for a wedding, probably about 5 years ago, and I went and caught up with a guy who was founded the World Transhumanist Society, lives out in Brighton, actually lives off domain names he bought at the beginning of the internet. So no job, just every year sells off a few domain names and he's managed to get by. And I was like, okay, I think I'm not sure about the silicon-based singularity happening. Maybe it will, but maybe it'll be like some kind of hive mind, like the Borg thing. We'll have like brain-computer interfaces plugged in. Our culture will become an emergent consciousness. When that would be a singularity. And he said to me, no, it won't work because the binding problem. And then he spent probably a couple of hours trying to explain to me the hard problem of consciousness, the binding problem of consciousness. I didn't really understand it then. I probably still don't completely understand it now, but I did watch a few TED Talks on it and managed to kind of collate the main points about what the binding problem of consciousness is and our lack of understanding, which is why we're no closer to having kind of real artificial consciousnesses. So the best way of thinking about it is your mind, and again this is kind of an allegory, your mind is generating your version of reality. So when I'm looking around this room, my mind is creating a simulation of what the world looks like based on electrical inputs it's getting from my eyes, from my ears, etc. And it kind of it generates this reality. It's if you really want to understand it's a generated reality, like if you have a lucid dream, so you're conscious in a dream and you look around, you'll notice that your brain's in offline mode, but it can still generate a full reality. So you are kind of an observer of your own simulation, and it's not a complete, it's not a complete take on what the real world is, but it's a near enough approximation. And that experience of, you experience reality, you feel, you see, this. The experience is your consciousness. So if you made today, AI's, what's considered AI and machine learning, it's getting a lot smarter. Won't be long till robots kind of passing the Turing test, where you won't be able to tell that they're not a human, but they won't have this kind of spark of consciousness in them. And so what that means is that they're what's called a P-zombie, or a philosophical zombie. So they think, talk, and act like they're conscious, but they're not conscious. There's kind of nothing behind the eyes.
I know a little bit about that.
So the reason, well, we don't quite understand it, but what our brains manage to do is they manage to take all of the different sensory input from our eyes, ears, all the different senses. They manage to classify it and create like a hierarchical information structure of a table and a chair and a this and a that. And then they manage to bring it all together and generate, what you see around you, generate this reality that you see. So it's called the segregation problem and the combination problem. And no one's really sure how our brain does it. So one take is it's just massively parallel processes, self-referencing processes. That's about the limit of my understanding. It's called classical materialism theory. And then, so my friend David thought, well, it's some kind of quantum phenomena where actually things are manifesting in some kind of quantum state, and you're experiencing it. Who knows? But we don't know. All we know is that we don't know, and that it's what is kind of preventing us from, putting our brain in a computer or making smart AI. So I'll just go into a little bit more depth on what we do understand about consciousness. So a consciousness isn't just kind of taking sensory information in and then it's got a rendering program and it just creates what your reality looks like. It's kind of predicting what things will be. It's kind of approximating. It's making the best of whatever data it's got in order to kind of just generate something that makes sense. So Anil Seth, he's got some great TED Talks on it. He says, so your brain hallucinates reality. And really the difference between hallucination and reality is that reality is the part of the hallucination that we all agree upon. So, as long as we're kind of hallucinating the same thing, well, that's reality. If you want to see what your brain can do in terms of hallucination, in offline mode, lucid dreaming will definitely kind of expose that. But and this was the example I think Anil gave in this talk. As an example, like A and B are the same color, but your brain, when it generates the reality that you see, it's like, well, no, but the sunlight's hitting and then there's just shades that have actually got the same color. And it does all of this in the background to kind of, it predicts, well, actually, no, they're different colors, even though what we're showing it is the same.
He thinks it's the same colour.
Sorry, the square's the same colour as
So it's got A and B.
Well,
good
black
point.
and white aren't colours, but composites. He thinks they're the same colour. Yeah.
So one of the ways to actually
It's about half of us.
Contacts.
you can actually experience it.
Ones I can see.
If anyone's ever tried to give someone directions, go down the street, go that way, turn right, you are visualizing it as you do it. That's kind of like Tron kind of things, and that's the way to actually experience what we're actually talking about. Is actually think of how would I tell someone how to get somewhere, and your brain kind of flies through that, and it's like you're in that kind of spatial thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to break in Sydney at the moment. The building's freaking disappearing.
So, you can find, this is kind of a tangential story, but I've done a lot of lucid dreaming, which is being conscious while you're in a dream. And I've made it, some of the stuff I've done is actually just to kind of do some testing of this kind of dream reality. Like some kind of, you could say some kind of...
Has anyone seen Inception? Yeah. So that was based on a true story. This is. I'm just kidding.
Sorry. This is essentially like your brain in offline mode. So it doesn't have all the stimuli coming in, but it's still actually pretty good at generating a reality. And what I've done is a set of experiments to kind of find the flaws in kind of this dream reality, at least my dream reality construction. So some of the things it doesn't seem to do very well is like gravity. Gravity doesn't work. You just kind of float down or float up or things like that. Mirror images will turn into people. Other kind of minor details, like I remember reaching into a branch and the branch is kind of here, but then I feel it here, kind of off by about 10 centimeters.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You won't agree.
Another test you can do is just to understand even how your brain constructs your individuality. Is called, I think, the dummy hand test. So what happens is this lady's put a real hand behind this wall, and the guy is kind of painting this fake hand at the same time that he's kind of touching her real hand behind the side. And it takes kind of a minute or so, but after that point, your brain thinks, because it's looking at the sensory information, it's like, I can feel when he's touching my fake hand. And so at some point, your brain actually thinks, oh, this is my real hand. And so at that point, he grabs one of those pins, kind of sticks it in, and one of your lower brain functions like that, the amygdala, just immediately just reacts and pulls away from that experience. Yeah. The other thing that our consciousness does is it's all the feelings you have around your body. Whether you feel full or whether you feel tired or whatnot. You've got a whole lot of information coming in. And so what they think is that consciousness may have emerged as a way of regulating bodily function. So giving you a feeling of what's happening in the body and then regulating that feeling. So you start with a kind of a lower organism, and then the level of consciousness kind of grows. And that kind of shows, in many ways, consciousness is kind of independent of intelligence. So you've got intelligence, well, and you've got thinking machines, and then you've got like this conscious kind of experience. So the bits that people do better than animals, at least from a consciousness perspective, is the abstract modelling. So Stephen Hawking's he put a book out on model-dependent realism, where he's saying, reality is whatever models you want to create in your head. So like one model is like the world experience, which is pretty consistent. The other models that you'll have is the theory you have on how the universe works. So say it's Aristotle's universe with the Earth at the centre. And models are fine. A model is never going to be perfect. So Aristotle's universe works until you start looking at the orbits of moons around planets. Another model is what we do when we model people. So, for instance, like I see you here. I've got a model for what a person is, but then I'm also modelling what you think of me. So it's like two layers of modelling that's kind of going on in your head, and it's kind of like your kind of abstract kind of relational modelling process. Same could be said for more abstract things. That's kind of the high function. So that's the stuff that's kind of above, like just the world simulation side of it. Last point would just be around decision making. So I mean, we talked about how you can kind of have the illusion of thinking a dummy hand is your hand, and then there's like how your brain kind of constructs this world simulation illusion that you see, or hallucination. And then there's kind of, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the illusion of decision making, but what even if you were to take the this Cartesian theatre model of, okay, I'm sitting in my mind, it's generating this reality, I look at it and then I make a decision and I do something. But that's kind of how we think it works. But then in reality, you have a number of different decisioning processes in your brain, starting at the amygdala level, which is kind of the old reptilian part of your brain, going up to the neocortex. And so depending on the kind of stimuli coming in, different parts of your brain will then make a decision, and then you may consciously experience it after it happened. So as an example, if someone suddenly swerved into you on the road, you would immediately turn. That kind of decision is being made by your amygdala, and it's going to reach your consciousness after the fact. As an example, there's been some other kind of experiments done which show, it can take up to 10 seconds after a decision is made for you to be consciously aware of the decision. Which isn't to say, I guess what it's showing is that not only is this kind of simulation engine trying to generate the world that you see, but it's also trying to give you this kind of cohesive experience of agency, right? Like, I made this decision, then I did that, and then I did that. Even though it's really just a whole lot of different kind of decisioning systems or feelings. So like if you're feeling ambivalent or unsure about things, you've probably just got different decisioning processes kind of competing over which one is right. Another kind of lucid dream example that I did was to just see what would happen in a head-on collision, which is, okay, so I'll drive my car into another car and just, obviously make sure it's a dream before you do this. But it was interesting. It was interesting because, so I know, kind of my neocortex knows that it's a dream, but my amygdala, like my lower brain function, doesn't know it's a dream. And so it gets incredibly scared and pumps me full of adrenaline, even though what it's looking at is just a dream, right? Because your lower brain functions don't actually know the difference. It's the same whether it's real life or whether it's a dream. I guess.
Actually, you're saying that snakes they only have limits, so they not dream.
Do snake stream?
I'm not sure if snakes stream or not. I think so. You've got the neocortex, but then you've got the part of the cortex, the visual cortex, which generates images.
Right.
So I think with humans, the main difference is the abstract thought bit. So when I was talking about the modeling of the universe, and you being able to think about the fact that the universe is 13 plus billion years old, that's something that a snake wouldn't do. But a snake's still going to look around the savannah and see a tree and see a this and see a that.
But I'd argue we can't think about that either. We have the concepts that
I know the puppies
size.
stream. Puppies definitely
They're
stream. Like,
indeed.
you know, they're like running in their sleep. They're like that. So that's a thing, right? Am I just saying? It's different. Yeah, different receptions of the.
So do you like fashions by
No, it's fine. It's fine.
He's actually lucid dreaming right now.
So I guess like a summary on singularity and consciousness. So why we don't have like an AI taking over. So the binding problem of how the mind kind of integrates objects, backgrounds, emotions into what we see is not understood. And until we actually understand how it works, there's no chance of us being able to build some kind of AI to do it.
Well, it's arguable that it's needed because if we do build something that can make choices and it just goes, black and white, humans are going to kill them.
Yeah.
Conscious gives context and everything and a bunch of other things. So why would you have the self-decisions? Not going to be very friendly ones.
Exactly. So what we could do is we could make a really, really smart general artificial intelligence that's a zombie. And by that what I mean is you could optimize it. Okay, this is the economic model. You need to maximize productivity, and then it kills all the humans because they're inefficient, right? And it would do that, but it would do it unconsciously, right? It's not going to think it through. Someone would have programmed in, this is the model you're running, or programmed in at least the construct by which it's going to adapt its decision-making processes, depending on what kind of Bayesian decision tree.
All the historical training data through all of this.
Yeah. Regardless of how complex it got, because before, like as I was saying, our brains are in many ways just a whole bunch of different decisioning and signaling processes. If you can make a really complex one, it's not so much that, it's the fact that it wouldn't actually experience it. And so, this binding problem may prevent kind of so if you think like the Borg, where you've got like this hive mind kind of taking over. So the binding problem of consciousness could prevent that as well, because maybe there's some kind of physical limitation on, how the information needs to loop and how it all comes together, which would prevent like a greater kind of consciousness emerging. And then because I think more kind of theoretically and philosophically and whatnot, as opposed to a lot more of the transcendence movement, or much more interested in the here and now. I thought, okay, well, I'll try and come up with a few kind of here and now type things. So, what can we do based on, all this kind of theoretical information? And when I thought through the immediates, I really thought, three things. So one is mindfulness. So I don't know if you've heard of mindfulness meditation, but mindfulness is really just understanding your own kind of emotions and decision-making processes. And so you're kind of observing the observer. So instead of just reacting to situations, you kind of observe your thoughts, think about it, and then decide how you want to act. So it's an observation of the observation. And what that allows you to do is kind of retrain parts of your brain to make different kinds of decisions. So, if you
what's your thoughts on mindfulness 2? Mindfulness 2 is, because we're at a point now where we can do a lot of brain activity measurement, EEGs, etc. We're soon to be able to actually have a model of what our, of how we're feeling, and be able to see it externally. So we'll actually have an external vision of that ourselves, and something we can look at and go, okay, if I tweak that, did this kind of the next level where we're actually aware of our own mindfulness itself.
Yeah, no, definitely. I am not aware of the EEG. I mean, I'm sure it would get turned into some kind of dashboard around how
You've got
happy
some-
it's.
that's some
Oh,
like
okay.
EEG.
It'd be good to have a look at.
You do some live demos after this. Just you know, stick around.
But yeah, it ties into the last point in the immediate, which is quantified self. I mean, for me, I have a Fitbit scale, I have a Fitbit watch. You know, I get the data, just that kind of data to, you know, see what my sleeping patterns are like, my eating patterns, so like calorie count and then all that kind of thing. And the main reason I'm getting all of that information is because your body makes decisions, but it doesn't always make the best kind of decisions. So anyone who's tried to diet would be aware that your body's decision making around whether you're hungry or not is very different to what your kind of what your rational mind would be thinking. So you know, like I have to get my data out, generate the chart, get a bit of a dopamine hit when it's heading in the right direction, because I can't rely on my internal decision making process to just naturally do that. So yeah. Get as much quantified self-information as you can, and because your body isn't always going to, I mean, it does an amazing job, but it's not always going to make the best decisions. It's, you know, it's got a lot of legacy code. That stuff's in there to stop you starving, you know, but that's unlikely to happen these days.
And listen to this, guys, because he just lost 10 kilos just measuring and quantifying. Do a Fitbit for all. Yeah, that's and Ski's lost 40, so no, that's a different story.
He's part of the neo-evolution people. Like, where does all this data go? It's like plastic. It's like you just go data halls of like this data from like I woke up 5 years ago. I woke up at 3 a.m. and then that bit of data is sitting somewhere. It's
like charge 15 cents.
Yeah, it's gonna be put in a big data lake, and insights will be derived, right? You know, like that's the theory. I guess last immediate point would be, so yeah, your brain, like, you don't really have a lot of control over how you generate reality, like what you're seeing right now, but you do have a lot of control over what stuff you model, like the abstract models that you build, which is really just like saying, you know, be selective about what kind of stuff you want to learn. So for instance, Einstein spent like 20, 30 years of his early life imagining what it would be like to travel on a beam of light. And what came out of that thought experiment in the end was, you know, theory of relativity. So, you know, he devoted a lot of time and energy to building that model. Same goes for, say, Stephen Hawking. So yeah, put a bit of thought into what kind of complex models you want your brain to kind of focus on. So then, I guess the less immediate things would be, so brain-computer interfaces, I think, you know, amazing stuff. So you've got kind of limbs that people are adding on. So you would have seen like someone's got an amputated hand and they've got like a robotic one to replace it. That stuff is really cool. What we don't have at the moment is it's not really bi-directional. So we can get the data to go out and you can get a bit of reactive information coming back in. But for the most part, like for instance, if I go to the pub and I buy a third beer, I can't get a feeling from, you know, my bank account telling me, well, you know, ease off, like, or like you're gonna get a hangover tomorrow. You know, we can't kind of feed sense. We can't use computers for what they're good at, right? Which is processing all this data. Our brains work a lot slower, right? To give us a feeling about something, which would be great. BCI basically. We want more BCI chips, all that kinds of stuff. So and then after that, and again, I guess just because I'm a bit interested in the whole dreaming thing, I think we're gonna basically replace like the sensors we have, like our eyes, ears. They'll be like legacy sensors. We'll have, you know, like some kind of direct internet connection. It'll be like the Matrix, right? You'll generate your reality. It'll no longer be constrained by your legacy sensors.
Neil's name?
Sorry?
Neil
Howison? The guy with the antenna.
He's got the antenna. He hears colour.
Oh, yeah.
So he's got that plug this straight into cerebral cortex. Sorry, what is that?
Yeah, and he's colorblind.
Yeah, so he's colourblind, so he actually, when he looks around, he actually hears colour, so he has levels of new senses.
I think I may have seen that TED talk.
And magnetics is the other sense that we can quite easily develop into those. Yeah. Implants and you feel magnetic fields and.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it seems like whatever we kind of plug in, our brain just learns to it, adapts to it, and then kind of builds it into your kind of individual experience. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about. So if you've got any questions, lots of.
Before everyone else asks a question, I want to ask Stefan a question. So are we the AGI that we're going to come up with, essentially, just by connecting us to the cloud? Is that what you...
Yeah, I think so. Well, and it's because if we don't really understand how consciousness works, then the risk averse option is that, well, then we remain consciousness, and then that gets connected to the cloud. And then the cloud does all the other information processing, but all the experience still remains in our heads.
But we could code it as we go along, right? What we understand of it, we could code it and keep evolving that. In fact, the code itself evolves much faster consciousness is.
Yeah, I mean, look, until we actually understand how consciousness works, then we can just speculate. So in the immediate gap.
And I call this, given a lot of the things that are happening in the world at the moment, I call this like the next decade is the decade of the brain. We've got equipment here that can speed up your motor cortex by a factor of 10. We've got brain control interfaces. There's videos out where people have been learning virtual reality to think of movement, and they've actually become non-paraplegics out of it. They've basically thought their way out of being paraplegics. So we are just scraping the surface of what the actual brain can do. And now that we can harness it, and the cost of these sensors and the EEGs have gone so low, it means that all the players, like the makers and people experiment, are starting to be able to get creative. A guy, there's been some really good brain-computer interfaces. But a kid in the US, did anybody ever see the Star Wars trainer? It was like, it had a single little baby EEG in it. It was like $30 or something. Anyway, a kid wired that into an old car. So for about $30, he did thought trigger, and he plugged it into the accelerator, so he could think, and the car would take off for $30. So this is where we're at, and how cheap things are going to be. When we all start collecting that data and everything, that's going to be what we can figure out with the brain.
Steve, we have some more questions.
Yeah.
So just
Mr. Smith?
yes. This comes directly out of having just over 2-year-old and 6-month-old. We're talking about what is consciousness. My 1-week-old, when I was 18, didn't know anything, just like a computer. Now, so as a thought experiment, if a newborn baby had a bunch of sensors hooked up to it and a video camera and a team of data processors all watching every single thing he learned, and every single lesson that he learned, including like an MRI scan of his brain, there was his entire company, every single lesson that child learned got entered into a computer program. In 10 years' time, with that, just think about every lesson, everything, you don't start off smart. You get programmed by parents, by your society, by everything that happens. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is everything you've learned since you were born.
You got some transfer learning, from all the reptilian stuff, right there.
Yeah. Plus that. So 10 years into this thought experiment, if you've programmed every single lesson that the same human has learned, would that computer be classed as conscious?
I would say it would. It would be a zombie, right? So it would appear conscious, but it wouldn't be conscious.
And what is the difference between that and your child?
Awareness.
Yeah, it's just being aware, like experiencing.
So the key thing between us and animals is we know we're alive. We know what we are. Having an awareness of what you are. And computers, as much as it can fake that, doesn't know that it exists.
Another way to think about it is to quantify it, right? So have you guys heard Michio Kaku's speech? He was in Sydney a few weeks ago. So Michio Kaku is a theoretical physicist, and he just delves into consciousness. And one of the ways he wants to think about consciousness is it's based on feedback loops, the number of feedback loops. So a plant might have some feedback loops. It has senses of the sun, where the energy is going to be, and also from the roots, where the minerals are. So there might be 2 or 3 feedback loops. And then you add to another layer, say it's a mammal, dogs have certain senses, but it's missing some additional feedback loops at the awareness around abstract thoughts, right? Around what's the future of humanity, or what's the future of the universe. And every one of those feedback loops just increases the complexity to the point where you might define it as that was a Cartesian theater.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. So even like you guys explained, it's also called reinforcement learning. So in that we have a lot of policy and states, right? So after every experience, we need to have our separate policy and separate actions, separate states. So even if a baby, like our brains would be really fast to like accommodate with it, but if we do with a computer, then it's going to be a very huge problem because we will be solving different domains, and each domain will have its own actions, states, and policies, and what to do, even if we follow mathematics to solve it. So yeah, maybe someday.
Maybe
With
someday.
reinforcement learning.
And so there's a guy, Douglas Hofstadter, who I think has written like I couldn't follow it, but apparently it's the best stuff on consciousness. And he talks about it, describes it as a self-referencing system. So you have a system that recursively looks in on itself. So you experience something and you think about that experience, and then that gets reincorporated into. I can't explain it because I don't really get it, but
It's just from simplicity comes complexity out of that feedback loop system.
yeah. Well, there you go.
So do you think we're actually on the wrong path at the moment, given that people are tuning out of what's going on, like in their phones, in their beings, not paying attention to what's going on around them? We're actually seem to be tuning more out.
I disagree. What we're doing is we're just changing the information that we focus on. So sad as it is, people are much more interested in like information that's coming to them on their phone than the information that's external to them.
That's because they're different
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
That's it. But also, it's a sense of presence, right? You know, you're aware and you're present in your physical self. But then they're just present in the virtual self.
Yeah, and it's only gonna.
All their socials. They're more connected than they are physically.
Google was trying to do the whole augmented reality, the augmented reality glasses, and it didn't really catch on. But when that comes, then you're going to have this augmented reality, or even be looking at something else, and you'll start to lose the information, and what you see around you is going to become less and less important to your brain, because it's just going to be more focused on this kind of virtual reality, I think.
Have you read How to Create a Mind by Ray Kurzweil?
I haven't read that one of his books.
It's pretty hard read.
It's
It's really hard read, but yeah.
It's a really good book. With How to Create a Mind is saying that we're going to solve consciousness by 2030.
Yeah.
I believe that. I really believe that because
He's already revised that.
He's revised it.
Yeah, 2029 now. Yeah.
Did you also look at embodied consciousness? Like, you're saying that the reason that your AI was stuck for a long while was that they were thinking of creating a disembodied consciousness. But it's only when they made robots that had bodies and react to the environment that they were able to.
I think
So maybe it's hard to create a disembodied consciousness. We need bodies. The whole body is involved in that consciousness.
the feedback loop or the reaction. I haven't looked into it, although what Anil Seth was thinking is that it's the regulation of your body which he thinks led to the emergence of consciousness in the first place.
And you might not need the physical robot body, right? You can simulate that. Say GTA 5, right? They're using that to train self-driving cars, and it's actually getting pretty accurate. I think it's getting some wrong incentives around, robbing banks, right? People are getting extra points, but it's sort of trying to stimulate that world. Come up with Deep Mind's doing. Have you seen that crazy stick figure thing that's jumping over stuff? That it's like found a new way of running efficiently as a stick figure.
Yeah, but I think
It
it's
looks
for
crazy,
the.
right? Yeah, if you're a stick figure.
What about collective consciousness?
So
I don't think we're that far. I think we're very close.
yeah. So I mean, you say in terms of the other kind of theory of consciousness at the moment is panpsychism, which is that consciousness is everywhere. So this chair could be conscious. It's just that it thinks so slowly and it has no way of expressing itself. So like that consciousness can never kind of manifest itself. Or like maybe like a nebula is conscious, or things like that. And so therefore, kind of consciousness could emerge out of any kind of system. So with the kind of emergent consciousness, my thoughts on that is, so you could have BCI, so brainwave integrated people, sharing conscious experience, or like sharing culture, units of culture, or memes, meme plexes, and that what you're doing then is you're speeding up the flow of information. So the flow of information and culture at the moment is constrained by how fast people can talk, how fast people can read, how fast people can listen. If you can transfer thoughts, then the information process speeds up so much that potentially a consciousness can emerge out of it. But it all just depends on whether all of these kind of linked, say, people, whether that can all just kind of emerge into a greater consciousness. Because maybe there's some constraints on binding theory constraints which say no, like, you know, you need the information to flow at this rate between things, and you can't create a Jupiter-sized brain because the information takes, I don't know, 10 minutes to get from one side of Jupiter to the other side.
I guess it's maybe not a collective consciousness probably for now, it's more a collective learning. So like Tesla's. The interesting thing about, and this is the thing a lot of people don't understand about robotics and artificial intelligence, is there's not one robot sitting there learning. There is a million of them all contributing at the same time, learning. And that's what the Teslas, they're constantly every experience a Tesla has, every other Tesla learns about.
Yeah.
So it's collective learning, maybe, kind of the information.
Like swarm intelligence.
Yeah.
Swarm
And
there you go.
it determines like its
I like
food
that.
source and then everyone knows.
I like that.
I would argue that already exists now. So
Yeah, it's not
if
saying it already exists, we've got
if
it.
you take an advanced memplex, like so if you look into I don't know, Dan Dennett or Richard Dawkins stuff on memetics, they look at kind of ideologies or religions as kind of advanced kind of information organisms that have traits, you know, so depending on, if you take some kind of ideology, the ideology will want to spread to different hosts, or will want to get rid of the other ideology, you know, so it really kind of acts in many ways like a biological organism. So whether that kind of mimetic organism could become sentient or we don't know, but definitely it's going to get a lot smarter. So if you think ideologies are bad now, like they are only going to get a lot worse, right? Because they're going to get a lot smarter.
Sorry, 2 questions here and then over there.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation here. From what I'm hearing, I think there's an issue with understanding what is consciousness.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's a definition problem. Yeah.
I think it's a definition problem. Okay, so if we were religious, consciousness is that which God has breathed into a being to give it life. In this context, not Christian, I think what I'm hearing is that, well, consciousness depends on the level of intelligence, the amount of information, the ability to process that information. Okay.
And also awareness.
Why separate them?
Well, okay. If we look at the difference between, say, AI and general artificial intelligence, what we're saying is that one has the ability to process a lot more information, to be able to store and sort of the frequency with which that information is processed. Really, that's what it comes down to. And I think that when you look at, you know, what Ray Kurzweil's doing, or what Google's doing, or what Tesla, or whatever else, I think there's a departure away from, say, the spiritual understanding of consciousness, and we're just literally dealing with data, literally dealing with processing, and of course, you know, the high mentality.
In line with what you were saying earlier, spiritualness, religious, whatever, is just going to contribute to your overall experience of the world, right?
Yeah. But what if our world at the moment is being changed? It's been redefined, you know.
In our experience.
I'd argue that's been happening all
It's evolution.
time.
So I guess to your points, because I'm not sure if you were there earlier on, I wouldn't want to explain consciousness away as information processing, we call it the binding problem or the hard problem of consciousness because we don't understand it. What we do know is that it isn't just about information processing. Our brains process information a lot slower than computers do, but it isn't what makes us different to them. At the same time, there is a bias in the scientific community against what would be called dualism, or a mind-body dualism, which is separating the soul from the brain. So, as you were saying, like God breathes life into the body, and that's you could argue it's biased, but it's science wants to explain things in terms of classical materialism, which means everything must exist because of the physical environment that is around us. Again, to the other point, it's a model. Feel free to use whichever model works best for you. A model is just as good as the accuracy that it has. No one's model is perfect.
It all starts out as ideas.
Yeah.
Einstein, everybody, and
Last question.